Hello, and welcome to another Silver Screen Filmmakers Club workshop. We are glad you are joining us today. The information provided to you today is brought to you by the Stage Incubator, along with our sponsor, the Indiana Arts Commission. This is also brought to you in partnership with the Center for Urban and Regional Excellence at Indiana University Northwest and Folk Art, the Volunteers Office for Community Accessibility Resources and Training. Hello, everyone. Hello. So, you're back. You haven't given up yet, but I want to welcome you to the next lesson of the Silver Screen Filmmakers Club in partnership with the Indiana Arts Commission. And we are back in our workshop. So, in our last class, we covered a number of things, but just to get us, started here, of course, you're in the Introduction to Canva course, and we're using our imagination and our creativity to create the movie poster for your film. Of course, we are sponsored by the Indiana Arts Commission in partnership with the Center for Urban and Regional Excellence, as well as VOCART, Volunteers Office for Community Accessibility, Resource, and Training. And we want to give a special shout out to our sponsors and our partners. They have been incredible in this process. Now, I'm going to sort of fast forward through a couple of slides we covered in our last workshop, and we're going to get started in our next lesson here. This is lesson 3, Basics of Graphic Design. So, in this lesson, we're going to cover a number of principles that are tied in to graphic design. And hopefully, this will be a short lesson, but I want to give you some key fundamental points to keep in mind before we get started with actually designing. Are you ready? All right, for this lesson, we're going to cover 3 main points. We're going to cover what is graphic design, you know, understanding what it is. Did you know that graphic design is an actual science? It's an art, but it's a science. And so we're going to just talk a little bit about that, brief overview, and then we're going to talk about the importance and key principles of graphic design. Now, these are not at all an exhaustive list of principles. There are a number of principles involved in graphic design, but we're going to cover just a few of them, some things that I want you to keep in mind as you design your movie poster. And then we have a quick little activity where, we were going to do this in class, but just to sort of give you some comparisons so that you can see how these principles come into play. All right. So we are in the basics of graphic design. What is graphic design? Graphic design is a branch of science from the art of design. Did you know that graphic design is actually a science? Yes, I mean, I know plenty of you probably like, I'm not good at science. I don't do science. I don't have science in my regular life. Well, of course, if you cook or anything of that nature, you do, play with science every now and then. But graphic design is actual science. It is all about visual communication. What you need to put where to communicate a message. Now, graphic design includes visual arts, typography, layout, and interaction. So, when we're talking about visual arts, we're talking about the images that are included in graphic design. For example, when you look at, I have the text basics of graphic design in blue, and then right underneath it, I have something that I created to visually express basics of graphic design. Now you notice there is like a color wheel up there. That is a visual art. So it's a color wheel that I put together basically using shapes to express the various colors that could possibly be used in graphic design. Then we have typography. So typography is how I chose to use fonts and font sizes to express a message. For example, here we have the basics, and that's going up and down in orange on the side. It's turned over on the side, laying down, taking a nap. And then we have of graphic design. Those are two different font sizes and colors. I used just text to put that together visually. Now, layout is how this slide itself is laid out. And I want you to think about that when it comes to your movie poster, is how you want information laid out on what I like to call your canvas. So your canvas is whatever area or space that you're working with. Some people would call it a work area. I laid out this information on the slide a certain way. So of course, we read from left to right. And so I have the basic information, the title, and the description on the left hand side. And then I have the actual content and the text on the right hand side. I laid this out with plenty of white space so that it can breathe and you're not over inundated with words on a screen, but also something that's visually appealing to grab your eye while conveying information. And then interaction design. All right. So here are some brief examples of graphic design. You have graphic design in your everyday life. On our left hand side, we have a picture of a hallway leading to offices. And as you notice, there's a number 3 on the wall and as signage. That is graphic design. Then we have our next example here, rent the best car. You know, those apps on your phone, when you're going on your phone and you're looking at that visual app, and it has a button here and it has a field here for you to put information, and it has drop downs, and then it has other pictures. A graphic designer sat with a developer. Sometimes they're one and the same, sometimes it's multiple teams, but they sat with that developer to see how they can visually show what the person needs to do. That's also an example of interactive design, because you have these different fields that you want people to put in information. And so you have text above those fields, and you want them to put, their name or their number, or choose from the drop down time. If you want to rent the best car, what kind of car do you want? What class of car? Mid-size, economy. A graphic designer sat with the developer and they laid out what this app needed to look like. Then in our next column here, we have letterhead at the top, business cards, letterhead, envelopes, brochures, pamphlets, magazines. Those all are examples of when graphic design is used to communicate information. Underneath that visual of letterhead, we have what I have here is a truck. Now, I know you've probably seen either during political times or even just when you're at a festival, and you'll see, trucks or trucks that are wrapped in colors and logos from a company. That's a visual billboard. And so, without having to go up to you and tell you what that company is about or sell you on what they do, they visually wrap a vehicle. And so, it's passive advertising, but that is a form of graphic design. We also have a picture here of a cup and a bag and a cue card from a coffee shop. Every place we go from, if you visit different coffee shops, if you visit your local donut place, they have their branded bags and their branded cups with their logo and maybe a slogan. That's a part of graphic design. And lastly, here we have a poster. Now you're going to be developing your poster, but you have a poster, and that poster will invoke certain emotions, all depending on the colors and the theme that is tied in visually that people can see to convey your message. So we have graphic design in our everyday life all the time. So what the next part I want to cover is those four key principles. Now, again, like I said, this is not an exhaustive list at all. There are a lot of different principles of graphic design, but I'm going to focus on four key principles. And those four key principles are balance, contrast, alignment, and proximity. Balance, contrast, alignment, and proximity. All right, so let's get started. Let's jump into that. Balance. We have balance here. Now, on the left hand side, we have examples of what balance can look like from symmetrical to asymmetrical. On the right side, I have our text here. So, balance, in order to achieve visual balance through the distribution of elements, elements need to be placed on a page or, as you see here on this slide. And any elements placed on that page carry a visual weight. It can range from form to size, color, and texture. In order to make a design feel stable or have balance, the elements need to have a certain scale. Now, lack of balance would make your design feel heavy on one side and empty on the opposite side. So here, even on this slide, we have asymmetrical and we have symmetrical. Now, symmetrical, it has the two images at the top, and then it has text that goes all the way down to the bottom of that page. That page looks balanced. Why? Image on one side, image on another side, and then equal amounts of text on either side. Balance. Now, asymmetrical, you only have the two images, but one is at the top and one is at the bottom. Now, what I want you to think about is we have one at the top, nothing in between, and then one at the bottom on the other side. Where does your eye first go? Our eyes usually go top left, bottom right. So when you're thinking about your movie poster and you're thinking about what you're going to design, remember how we read. We read from top left to bottom right. Top left, bottom right. So wherever you want the reader's eye to go first, you need to put that at the top. Okay? But you need to have balance. We don't want to deter the person that we have looking at this because it's imbalance. Next, we have contrast. Now, you can have different types of contrast. Contrast refers to the level of difference between design elements in order to create visual hierarchies. Visual hierarchies, which means the way we visually want people to see things in the order we want them to see them, a hierarchy. So a hierarchy is, for instance, if you think about a typical family structure, you have the mom and the dad, and then you have the children, and then if you have pets, you have the pets. The hierarchy usually starts with parents, children, and then pets or whatever. If you look at a family tree, it's the great grandparents, then the grandparents, then the parents, then the children. So it's a hierarchy. Same thing goes with graphics, right? So the variation makes certain elements stand out more than others. You can apply contrast by using colors, textures, sizes, and shapes. In a layout, contrast is applied to create hierarchy between the font sizes. And we talked a little bit about this in our last session. For instance, if you have a heading, the heading is first and it's usually larger and it's at the top. Why? Because we want people to see that first. And then we may have a subheading. And then it gets smaller. Our body of our text is smaller. In a layout, contrast is applied to create hierarchy between the font sizes. Larger text tends to be read before any smaller text. So even with this slide, even though I have my little header to tell you what this is, my main thing that I want you to know is this slide is about contrast. So I used a large font size to say contrast at the top. And then I have the body of the text, the information that I am reading off to you on that right side in a smaller font, and then the descriptions of the images. But your eye usually goes to the heading, and then now, because of the size of it, we have those images. Now, on one side, we have color contrast. Think about where your eye went first. Did it go to the lighter color, or did it go to the darker color? The light blue or the dark blue? And then size contrast. We have a big circle and we got a small circle. Where did your eye go first? So think about those things as you create your movie poster. Next element is alignment. Now, alignment in graphic design refers to placing graphic elements and text on a page that line up with your composition or the way you have it laid out. Alignment helps you to organize your design elements and create a visual connection. It makes it easier for the viewer to detect the most important information from your design and improve the readability of it. Okay, so we have two examples here. We have what I already told you what's the right way and what's the sort of wrong way. All right, so our blue circles, we have our title and our subheading, and you see they're aligned in a straight line. And then we have the incorrect way of alignment and a title and subheading, and we have a orange circle off to the side and then a big circle in the middle of the line. That is not a line. So that straight line, that's a line we're directing people into how we want them to view the information and then read the information. And then the other side, that confuses your reader, that confuses the person who is observing your information. So you want to make sure that things are well aligned on your design. All right. And next, proximity. Now, proximity consists of grouping related elements together to create relationships and hierarchy. Proximity rules aid in visual hierarchy. Elements that are related should be nearer to each other, and things that are not should be placed further from each other in your design composition. So you see, we have these three circles here on the left, three blue circles, and as you see, they're the same size. So they're related, and they're all blue. So they're related, right? And we have them spaced a little bit closer together, evenly spaced. So you know that they're related. You see them in a row. Now, our incorrect example of this is the one that's at an angle, the orange circles. And the orange circles, number one, are, if you look at the gaps are sort of off, but they're also not properly aligned. So that proximity is off. So even though you see that they're all orange, because the alignment, the spacing is off and how they're arranged, you don't know whether to read from left to right or from right to left or from up to down or this way to that way. You don't know because visually that is confusing. That is not in a row for you to be able to follow along. Proximity is important, and I want you to think about that as we design. All right, so let's talk about it. Identify how each principle is applied to enhance visual communication. So I have three samples here. One is a movie poster, one is an advertisement, and then one is a logo. Let's start with the movie poster. So our movie poster here on the left is a poster of the Sherlock Holmes movie. And there are a couple things that I want you to, sort of think about as we go through this. If you look here, what is one of the first things you see? I know for me, of course, I see the individuals in the front. And I see the individuals in the front, but the first thing my eye goes to is what's at the top. Oh, I see. This is Sherlock Holmes. Oh, these people right here must be in this movie. These are actors in this movie, main characters. Now, you see that they're in the middle, right underneath the heading. Now, my eye either goes to the bottom or it goes to the side. Let me look at the left hand side. Oh, these are some key elements that are a part of this movie. I see another character that is in this movie. I see, the owl. I see either dog or bear. So I see these different things. On the right side, ooh, we see who we're looking for. So there is dimension on this movie poster. You first have the header, Sherlock Holmes, and then you have the actors, and then you have some of those, what they would say, other cast members and different elements of the movie. And then if you go, for me, it's I go, from top to bottom, but I also go left to right, and then I look at that smaller font. Oh, who is in this movie? Robert Downey Jr. That's at the top. So I look and see who's in the movie, but then I go down to the bottom. Homes for the Holiday. And then you have that other information down there, like the producer, the director, and so on and so forth. While that information is important, what we want people to know is this is the Sherlock Holmes movie. So you see how they laid that out and provided different forms of balance because the colors balance, and then you have contrast. Think about the colors that they have for their clothes, but how their skin pops out with these colors. That's color contrast. It doesn't just blend all in. You see the key parties involved. So you see that. You also see proximity and you see alignment from how things are laid out on the page. All right, let's move over to the advertisement. Advertisement, this is balance as well. Number one, you have, of course, the bottle, and that's beautiful. And then you have all these different elements from the sky to the clouds to the water and the ocean. And what Evian is expressing here is that this is a clear, clean water that is natural spring water, as natural as the ocean. But also the color contrast. Evian, the word Evian is in a bright red font versus, and how that contrast is on that blue with equal amounts of white tied into it and really sort of open space because the open space is filled with the blue. So it's not a lot of words here. It's the focus is on the water and how clear the water is and how you just want to dive into the water. That's how clear it is. Okay, and then lastly, here on our right, we have Chanel. Now, some may recognize this logo, this brand. Others may not. But Chanel is a very, you can sort of say elite brand. Coco Chanel, they have uh, fragrances, perfumes, parfums, if you must say. They also have purses and accessories and so on and so forth. But you recognize this brand, even if I took out the word Chanel and just had the two C's interlocked, you would recognize that brand. It's simple, it's elegant, it's sophisticated. Now, what if it was just one C up there above the word Chanel? Would that feel balanced to you? It wouldn't. It would feel like something's off, like something's missing. The two C's interlocked creates that balance, but also because they're the same size, same font. Also, the two C's are above the Chanel. Why? Part of it is because they're equally the same. They're the same size. Those C's are the same size. So because they're the same size and equal, they have to be in proximity of each other. And then the word underneath it, Chanel, that alignment, showing that the two C's are at the top, and then the word Chanel. It's a hierarchy, a visual hierarchy. The two C's that are interlocked are a bigger size than the word Chanel. So they want you to get used to seeing those two C's. So even if you don't see the word Chanel, you know that it's Chanel. All right. So that is a quick and brief overview of the design principles, some of them. Now, I want you to think about a couple things as we, move on to the next. Some things to keep in mind, principles to keep in mind. Visual weight. This is how much a design element draws the viewer's attention. Think about that Chanel logo. Your eye first goes to what? Those C's because they are larger than the word. So it holds a visual weight that's greater than the word itself. White space. Use white or negative space more often. As we talked about in that Evian advertisement, even though it didn't have white per se, it had blue and what we call negative space. So you didn't have to read a whole lot around the bottle. Your focus was on that it was Evian water. Hierarchy. Guide the viewer's eye from the most crucial info to the least. Think about the movie poster. Sherlock Holmes was at the top, and it was in big letters. You could clearly see that. And then the information about the director and the actors and the producer, that was all at the bottom. It was there, but we want people to know this is the Sherlock Holmes movie. So that's at the top. Now, another thing that I want you to keep in mind, this is something that's a fundamental rule for me. And that when I started out in photography, I actually started in photography back in 1999, back when there was film cameras, and I actually learned how to develop my own film at Indiana University. We were in the dark room developing our own film. Um, but one of the things we learned that was crucial was the rule of thirds, and the rule of thirds also applies to graphic design. Rule of thirds, threes. So even when you're looking at this slide, essentially I split this side into three. Three areas across and three areas down. And so when you want to put key information on a slide or on a poster, you want to sort of use your mind to imagine three lines down and three lines across, splitting it up into essentially nine quadrants. And you want to put key information in each one of those areas. They use the rule of thirds when it comes to photography. You want to make sure that the subject you're filming either it fits in one of those areas. Same with graphic design. So you want to divide your layout in three ways, horizontally and vertically. All right. Well, I hope that this session here, where we covered the basis of graphic design, really gave you a lot of number one principles to think about, examples, and ways that you can really understand how to formulate your layout when it comes to designing your movie poster. This is the fundamentals, this is the foundation that we're building upon. Our next session or our next lesson will be we're actually going to explore Canva and set up our free Canva account and explore and navigate the Canva features to be able to work in Canva easily. All right, well, I'm thankful for you joining me today and be on the lookout for the next lesson. Well, I hope you learned a lot. Thank you for joining the Stage Incubator and viewing a part of our digital literacy series. We really appreciate you being here and thank you for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us at thestageincubator@gmail.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Again, we want to thank our sponsors and our partners, the Indiana Arts Commission, the Center for Urban and Regional Excellence, and VOCART, the Volunteers Office for Community Accessibility, Resource, and Training. We hope to see you at our next session, and stay tuned for more things to come.